Hi, and welcome back to Florida's Best Practices. I'm Amy, and this unit for 4th grade is multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Go ahead and take a look at the image on your screen. This will be the first time that students are multiplying fractions by whole numbers and also whole numbers by fractions. So we want to make it engaging for them, and we also want to explicitly explain the different strategies that there are. In this unit, Multiply Fractions by Whole Numbers, we will be exploring multiplication of a fraction by a whole number or a whole number by a fraction. Students can do this using a visual model or a number line. Students will also be solving real-world problems involving multiplication of a fraction by a whole number or a whole number by a fraction, again using that visual model or equation. What does student learning look like in the classroom? To begin with, you'll want to start with students multiplying unit fractions by whole numbers. You can do that with fraction tiles, drawing out the fraction tiles, and even with number lines. Students will then move to multiplying whole numbers by fractions. You can see that here, again, used with fraction tiles, as well as fraction circles. Students will then move to multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Fraction tiles are another great way to represent this, as well as using a model. What does student learning sound like in the classroom? Here are some math chat cards that can be used for discussion in the classroom. What does the fraction represent in the equations you wrote for each order? Students should be able to tell us what their fractions represent in their equations. Explain why the denominator does not change. When students are finding their answer from their multiplication, they should be able to tell us why the denominator did not change. Students should also be able to tell us about the commutative property and how multiplying fractions and whole numbers is similar to multiplying just whole numbers. Why is the product smaller than the whole number factor? Students should be able to draw a model and be able to tell us why that product is smaller than their whole number. Here's some vocabulary for this unit. Vocabulary that students should know are area model, equation, fraction, number line, and product. How will students demonstrate their knowledge? Here are some examples from STEMscopes. Here we can see an example of an exit ticket, multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Students have a model drawn out as well as the answer written as a mixed number and a fraction greater than 1. We can also see and explore here where students will draw out their fraction tiles and number lines. Another show what you know, again with number lines. And students can also use the Fluency Builder games. This one is Fraction Flash. Here are some questions to gauge student understanding. We want students to correctly model between a whole number and a fraction. Here are some examples using a number line and also a model. We also want students to be able to tell us the difference between multiplication of two whole numbers and also the multiplication of a whole number and a fraction. So you can see some sample problems on the board that are very similar and an example of the difference that students should be able to tell us. Here's an example of an engaging task or activity that can be done at home. This one's called rolling products. Students will roll 3 dice. One of the numbers can be used as a whole number and the other 2 can be used as fractions. They will compete with another person at their house to see who can create the greatest product. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got a lot out of this session, and I hope you learned some strategies to use in your classroom for multiplying a whole number by a fraction. I hope this is what your students look like when you teach them those strategies. See you next time.